Hey, it's Monday night, 7 p.m., and I'm Steve Cohen. Welcome to Promote You with Steve Cohen, the show where we talk about marketing and self promotion so that I can learn how to do it better. Maybe you can too. Tonight, we've got a really fun and exciting guest. He's the host and creator of Roast Yourself, also the past associate artistic director, nailed it, of the People's Improv Theater. It's Ronny Pascale. Ronny, how are you
Hello.
doing?
Good, you nailed it. So I'm very
I
happy I
did.
didn't have to correct you.
You had to correct me twice before we went. Well, you didn't correct me, but anyways, thank goodness for writing things down.
Exactly.
Uh, how has your quarantine been going?
It's been going somewhere. I don't know. Um, so I've been locked in my house for the last 2.5 months, like everyone else.
Sure.
And I originally, the first couple of days, was like, "Oh no, what do I do?" And then, like day 4 or 5, I was like, "Let's just start doing online shows."
Yeah, and that's how I actually met you at first. Was I was also doing an online Instagram live show, and then mine would end, and I'd get reminders that you were, and I was like, "Who's this Ronnie Pascal guy?" And I started
Actually,
watching.
that's not how we met. You don't remember how we met.
What?
We met at Bonnie Q. Harris's open mic. I don't remember. It was like a coffee shop on Third Avenue.
The only open mic I went to for her, though I am a big fan of Bonnie, was at the bar. She has a bar show on First Avenue, and upstairs she has a mic as well. So we
Yeah,
might have met there.
we did
Uh,
meet there.
all right,
That's
I do not, I do not remember.
okay.
Um,
Why would you?
I'm usually more concerned with how I'm making myself look like an idiot than who the people I'm looking like an idiot in front of are. So
Mhm.
it's a thing. It's a real thing. So you're quarantining right now in Brooklyn. Are you originally from Brooklyn?
I'm from New Haven, Connecticut, but say I'm from Brooklyn.
Okay, fair enough. I
Yeah.
was wondering. I saw a picture of you with a Boston Red Sox hat, and
Mhm.
that's not the norm. So is that okay for New Haven, Connecticut? You don't need to be a Mets or a Yankees fan there.
Uh, Connecticut has this so Connecticut's shaped like a rectangle like this, right?
Yep.
And then there's a highway 91 that goes down the center and splits
Yeah.
Connecticut in east and west. Generally, people who live in West Connecticut are New York fans, and Connecticut people in East Connecticut are New England fans. New Haven is right on the line, so everyone in my town
Okay.
was all over the place.
Okay. And ironic, people from New York and Massachusetts never Connecticut fans.
No, they hate us.
No.
They
Oh
call
my God.
us. Am I allowed to swear on this thing?
Sure. Just no hate language.
Well, they call us Connecticunts.
I've never heard that before, but I am amused and offended.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Sorry, I said
I
that.
will, I will look forward to using that in the future. So how long did you live in New Haven for?
27 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. I thought you were under 27 years old. So
thank you.
good job on the skincare regimen.
I
Um,
just turned 35. I'm an old man.
oh, wow. Congratulations. I'm still older than you. I still got you.
All right.
So what made you, well, what were you doing in New Haven? What was keeping you there?
uh, so I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the bass player for a punk rock band. That was
Awesome.
like my goal growing up. And I don't know why. I wasn't like pursuing it. I kept on saying I was doing it. I was recording stuff in my bedroom, but I wasn't like doing it. I wasn't doing shows. I had one guy I collaborated with, but he had some issues, his personal issues. I don't want to like out his thing online, but
Okay.
yeah. So like I liked playing with him, and in my brain it was like, so do you know the whole concept of like if you pitch someone something, they like it, and then you don't feel like you need to do it now because you already got positive feedback on it.
I've heard something to this effect.
Yeah, so it was like a whole lot of doing that. Like, oh, me and this guy were working together. We'd write a song. People were like, oh, that's a good song. And I was like, all right, cool. I don't need to do it anymore. And so that was like basically my whole life at that point.
Okay.
And then, yeah. And so I was just like recording these dumb acoustic punk rock wannabe songs in my bedroom and
Sure.
then going to work every day, doing my 9 to 5, and then coming home and just like watching TV.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that was my life for 27 years.
Okay, and what finally knocked you out of that? What finally made you move on to the next step?
So I worked at a grocery store, and I actually loved it. And I was promised it like filled my head up. They're like, "You're going to be a store manager one day. You're going to be a store manager." And then the day came. They were supposed to announce me. I was going to manage a new store that had just opened in New Haven, and they didn't say anything to me, and they just kind of like pushed past it. Yeah, and then they gave it to someone else, and I was like incensed. And I was like really depressed for like a month about this. And I was driving around one day, and a radio ad came on for a Second City Tourco show that was coming to New Haven. And I was like, oh, I should just go to that. Oh, in the commercial, they're like, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, all these people. And I was like, oh, for $40, I get to go watch all these people. Uh, None of them were there, but they said they would be there. And then I went and I was like, this is still really cool. And then I asked one of the performers, and they were like, yeah, take classes, do it if you want to do it.
Yeah.
And so I just started doing it. I started driving from New Haven to New York once a week, taking improv classes. Did that for 2 levels of improv, and was like, you know what, I should just move there and do it.
When I was in Chicago, I knew a couple of guys that would come down twice a week from Milwaukee, a 1 hour drive, just to do improv in Chicago instead. And it took them years to finally move down to Chicago. I mean, it incensed me that they were traveling so far and not just moving officially. Well, so
Yeah.
how long did it take you to make that move? When did you decide to do that?
Just about. So I did a level of improv is what, 2 months. So
Yeah, so 4 months.
4 months, yeah, 4 to maybe if there was time in the middle, but not much. So at most 6 months of improv class to moving to New York and saying like, let's just figure it out.
Okay.
And lucky for me, the grocery store I worked for is a big chain, so they just transferred me to a New York chain of it. So I had a job
Okay.
when I moved here, got a cheap apartment, and was like, you know what, we'll just figure this out. And if I fail, I'll just move back to Connecticut.
Okay, that sounds great. And obviously, you didn't fail. You're still in New York City. When did you start your Twitter account? How long has that been going for?
I started it in 2012, but I didn't start really actively using it until like 2015.
Okay.
Um, the history with my Twitter is many years. So I moved to New York because I wanted to write comedy. I wanted to write for 30 Rock. That was the ultimate goal.
Sure.
The 1 year anniversary of me moving here, 30 Rock had its finale episode, and I was like, never going to get that one. And then someone told me that Jimmy Kimmel hires his writers based off their Twitter feed. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't like pursued to know that, but that was what I was told, and so I started tweeting more. And about 6 months ago, 5 months ago, I decided to go through all of my tweets and like delete anything I didn't like starting from the beginning. And there were some bad tweets back in the day. And yeah, it was just a lot of tweeting. And the way that I have, for those who don't know, I have 41,000 followers and I'm verified. Not trying to brag or anything, just stating what is. I hate saying like, I am Twitter famous because I feel like it's kind of douchey to say. Am I wrong? Does that sound like weird to say? I'm Twitter famous.
I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine with you saying that. I think that it's pretty accurate. People know you. You actually shared one of my tweets a couple of weeks ago, and just to explain the power to you, for me, I had just gotten that tweet up to 101 likes, which was the highest I'd ever gotten. Before that, I think the closest was 70.
Mm-hmm.
It was 4 days that it took to get to 101 likes. I had it pinned. You just happened to retweet it, and all of a sudden it went from 101 likes, 20 retweets. Now it's at 355 likes, and I think 105 retweets. And most of those came within 12 hours of you having done that. It just exploded. So there is definitely a power to having followers, but I don't think it's just having followers. From what I've discussed with people, it's having followers that are really active and integrated into your life, which your followers really seem to be. You were able to get the blue check mark because you had a job that was kind of putting you out there and you were able to connect that. Were you getting a lot of followers before you got the blue check mark, or did the blue check mark really propel you to getting more followers?
I think it was both. In that, so the blue check mark came about. I don't think it was through my job at the pit. Actually, I think it was because. Do you remember the TV show At Midnight?
Yes.
Okay, so I wasn't a
Oh, right.
reader or anything by them, but I would tweet at them every day. In my brain, I was like, I'm going to treat At Midnight like a job. And if you're watching, don't know what At Midnight was, it was a game show on Comedy Central, and every night, yeah, they had a hashtag game that was integrated into it. So the game show that happened on TV was separate of this online game that happened. It was either 3 or 4 nights a week. And I would tweet at them pretty much every day, and I would do it for like an hour or two every night. So from midnight to like 1 or 2 a.m. was just incessantly tweeting, just trying to pitch as many jokes as I could to them. And I would say at least generally once a week they would feature me in their blog of like top 5 tweets or top 10 tweets. And most of my following came through that. And then the check mark came because back then they used to do a thing where news articles would be like, oh, today all these people are tweeting about Game of Thrones, and they would go on at midnight if Game of Thrones was like what the hashtag was, and they would be like, all right, here are 50 comedians who wrote about Game of Thrones today. And so there was a lot of news articles with my name attached to them just because
Okay.
of like a single tweet. And Twitter used to let you submit articles saying like, hey, I'm worthy of being verified because there are all these news articles with my name in them. And so that's how I got the blue check mark. And then I think like it goes up because I've had job offers solely because of check mark. With people not knowing who I am, they're just like, oh, you got a check mark, let me offer you this job, which I find to be infuriatingly crazy to me.
So, just to give you a little backstory on where I am, I really hadn't used Twitter since I started in 2010, except
Mhm.
for this program called Crowdfire. It got me a bunch of Russian bot followers, basically, and they would never respond to me, so I just stopped using Twitter. And then my friends all wanted to use it. I started, posting on there again. It seems to me that because I have 7,000 followers, other comics who are more famous that might not follow me just see that I have 7,000 followers and I'm only following about 5,000 people, and they'll just follow me back. They'll accept it, even though it looks like they don't follow a lot of people. So people are definitely really easily. I think people don't have a lot of time to go and check if information's correct. What information is.
Yeah.
So they will make decisions. Based on that. Were you when you got those jobs, did you ever feel like you should turn them down because you wouldn't be able to do the job? Did you take the jobs anyways?
Some of them I did. Some of them I like. There was. I mean, I don't want to give away too many details on what it was,
Sure.
but there was a directing job, and I had no desire for the job. And then when the producers were like, "Yeah, we just interviewed you because of blue check mark," I was like, didn't like that. But some satire websites have reached out to me, and then they've used my jokes, and I was like, or my tweets, or like had me write like little short satire articles. I like that. I think it just depended if I liked what it was,
Okay.
because yeah, I feel like I've put the work in by writing tweets and engaging with people, so it's all just part of the game. So you just kind of got to do it.
As far as normal marketing, non-social media marketing, have you had any experiences in your life where you've had challenges figuring that out?
Yeah, definitely. So I got hired to be pit artistic director because, or at least this is what I think happened. I got hired in January of 2015. Around August of 2014, I got drunk one night with friends, and then I pitched to them jokingly that we should make a Back to the Future musical.
Okay.
We made a Back to the Future musical, and it sold out on the pit main stage for, I don't remember the exact amount. It was like 10 shows in a row or something like that. So 1,000 people saw the show. They all loved it. I think the pit was like, oh, he knows what he's doing producing wise. Let's grab him, get him to do this job. I had no idea what I was doing. So it was a lot of like learning by like just booking a lot of shows, figuring it out, and I've learned a lot from doing that job. I'm sorry, I forgot what the exact question was as I was answering it.
Keep going, and I can come back to it. Do you want to keep telling the story, and I'll come back to the original question?
It was marketing issues, though, right?
Right. It was what marketing challenges have you run into? Not necessarily social media.
Gotcha. Yeah. So doing that show, got hired, little experience of being a producer, and I was just like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and then just trying to like recapture that was felt impossible,
Okay.
and I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to push things through. I mean, like for instance, there's a lot of improv shows that will sell out, like graduation shows, for instance, because it's the first time your family and friends are seeing your improv show, right?
Sure.
So my brain are like, oh yeah, improv shows always sell out. I didn't like understand the whole like, oh, it's the first time a family member seeing you do improv, and that's why in like level 2, your family and friends are less. Level 3, level 5, by the time you finish improv, your family and friends are tired. They don't want to watch your improv shows anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
unless you're doing something really good and special, right? And so I didn't understand that, and I was just like, oh yeah, improv shows are always going to sell. There's very little overhead, and like you exhaust the friends and family thing, for instance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I didn't understand like you just have to put yourself out there. One thing the pit owner says a lot is that you have to a show poster has to be seen 6 times before it registers in someone's brain. And I don't think I understood that at the time. So I was just like, we could throw together something last second and it'll sell out, and it won't sell out. And I was just like, you know what? It's very rare occasions where like you could be like, oh, celebrities dropping in, the show will sell out. But if there's not a celebrity attached to it, or if it's just like a generic show, it's not going to sell out, right? So
Why did the Back to the Future musical sell out so many times when these other shows didn't work out?
So, yeah, just to like go answer your question and say we took the Back to the Future thing, and then we did 4 more musicals after that. We
Okay.
did Steel Magnolias next. We did Ghostbusters, Hunger Games, Nightmare on Elm Street, and the Ghostbusters one clearly had a much bigger audience. And I think it was like this new, fresh, exciting thing. I think the community at the pit was like excited for something new. And I think each time after that, it wasn't new anymore. And so I think like it forced me to like think of like how to make something new all the time. Where yeah, I think the Back to the Future thing was just like fun and exciting. The guys who wrote it, so I produced it and then I made my 2 friends write it because they're better writers than I am. And one of the writers is also amazing at making props. So he made like fun, exciting props that I think like a lot of the pit audience hadn't seen. There was a lot more stagecraft involved than just like a sketch show or an improv show. So I think that's another reason it did a lot better than a lot of shows. And my cocky brain was like, oh yeah, all shows are going to be like this from now on. And they're not.
Every time something good happens to me, I'm automatically like, oh, this is going to be every day from now on.
Mm-hmm.
I had a day where I had a tweet and a Facebook post do really well, and I was like, oh, I finally made it. And then today I'm getting no likes on things, and it's okay. It's just what it is. But you get your brain pumped up for it. How long were you at the pit for?
Before associate artistic director, I was there for 2 years as house manager, and then I did associate AD for 2.5 years.
Okay. And what have you been doing since you left that position?
So I left in the end of June 2017. I left because I was burnt out. I didn't know what I wanted to do anymore. And so I moved to New York to be a comedy writer and then fell into this producer job.
Yeah.
And I don't think I clarified what an artistic director does. They're basically like the in-house producer. So if you're watching and you don't know that, that's what my job was. Is like booking shows, giving notes on other people's careers, but I wasn't focusing on my career anymore.
Yeah. How many hours?
What's up?
Per week? How many hours would you say you were working per week in that position?
50 to 60 generally.
Okay, and this is just as the associate position. Imagine. I'm assuming the next step up is even more, or
I think it was equal to, because the pit has 3 stages, and we both were just like doing the job of 1.5 people.
Oh,
So yeah, so there's the pit main stage, the pit underground, pit loft, and then at that time there's just me and one other guy.
mhm.
Now there's a team of 4 or 5. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so
Boy,
we
so the 2 of you were doing the jobs of 5 people.
yeah, it was a lot of work, and I was
Yeah,
very burnt out. I wasn't focusing on what I wanted to be doing, which was
sure.
writing jokes, telling jokes, doing improv, doing my sketch shows, being the performer. And I don't know if this is real or not, but my brain, I was like, I didn't start doing comedy till I was 27. So I feel like I was already behind the curve because I felt like most people took classes at like NYU or wherever. Like they decided they want to do theater when they're 18, 19, 20 years old. So I
Yeah.
didn't have that proper training. I felt like I was behind in that regard. And then, so when I quit the pit, I was 32. I had just turned 32, and I was like, I'm not doing what I want to be doing. So I moved to California, not even to do the comedy thing there, but my 2 best friends, the guys who wrote the Back to the Future thing, they had moved to California. And I was like, okay, I'll go stay with them till I figure out what I want to do. And when I did that, while there, I got hired to be the stage manager for a Game of Thrones live show.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, which was really cool. And I think that all came through because of the pit. Of like, they knew my resume. They were like, oh yeah, let's get that guy. We toured the entire country. It was pretty great. Um, and then something about like moving to California, having just like being shooken up was like, okay, I want to move back to New York and now just do it and like do the comedy thing. And I came back just about 2 years ago now, and I've been doing a lot more. I was doing improv and sketch predominantly. I was too afraid to do stand up. Stand up for me is only like, I started in like November, so
Okay.
pretty new to it all.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
You're that's impressive. I did not know that.
Oh, I don't. I think that's a compliment, so I'm
It
going to
is.
take it like it is one.
It was a compliment. I thought you were doing it for longer.
Well,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, for me, but like sometimes people are like, "Oh, you've only been doing stand up for X amount of time," but I was like, I've been writing jokes that I've been performing,
Yeah.
so I just had to figure a way to do them at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. No, just your delivery's very strong for someone that's only been doing it since November. But I mean, you have been performing. So I started out acting when I was 18, did improv comedy from like 22 to I think 32, and then basically quit everything just to put myself behind my business. But I've been in sales, so I'm always talking to people, and there is joke telling, and I feel like delivery is really difficult to get. And on the Roast Yourself show the other night, I was paying vast attention to the delivery. It's very, very good. So as far as stand up goes, how do you feel it's different writing jokes for stand up versus writing jokes for Twitter or for sketch or being in an improv show and kind of letting the jokes occur from the improvisation?
So I actually was thinking about that specific question today. An audience, Steve did not tell me ahead of time. Um, what I was thinking was, so on Twitter, you only see like a straightforward text, right? You're like,
Yeah.
here's my one line joke. Um, and so when I first started doing stand up, what I thought was I'll just walk on stage and basically read my tweets like from my brain. The audience won't see me reading it, but I'll just like joke, 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 joke. And what I learned very quickly is that you need to like in your brain bold some words, you need to underline some words, you need to make some words bigger, some words smaller. Does that make sense at all?
Sure. Absolutely.
And so I was like, oh, I need to figure out how to like pause a little bit more. I need to learn like these are things that Twitter doesn't teach you to do. And so jokes that do well on Twitter weren't translating to stage sometimes. And
Yeah.
I was like, why not? And I was like, oh, because of delivery. That's so much different. And so I had to figure out which words to accentuate more. And so I don't know if anyone else does this, but what I did was I made a spreadsheet and I made a list of all of my jokes that I was telling. And then I made, oh man, I forget which one's X axis and which one's Y axis. Uh,
I think X and Y,
okay.
if I'm correct.
Great. So my X was all of my jokes, and my Y was the dates of all the performances. And after the show, I would listen to the recording, and I would rate how the audience reacted, 0 through 10. Uh, and so I would just write like 7, 2, 5, 7, and then whatever, and then see what jokes were like not doing well and what jokes were doing well, and then try to figure out the jokes that weren't doing well, why not?
Great.
And listening to them, it generally felt like it was delivery.
And I think it really generally is a delivery thing, because usually you've got this really sharp, clever idea in your head that's funny, but the audience needs to connect to what's funny about it. Okay, Stefania says X is the bottom line and Y is the vertical line. I don't
Okay.
know. That's a great way how to measure how well jokes do. That is a great way to measure how well jokes do. And I like Excel spreadsheets too. I've been using Excel spreadsheets to count how much time I was on stage for January and February, and then all of a sudden in March, that Excel spreadsheet became irrelevant. Totally different. Stefania asked a question earlier, and I think this is a good time to bring it up. Also, I want to benefit her for giving us that information on the X and the Y lines. She asked, "How do you both approach tragedy plus time equals comedy?" And obviously, we're going through a time of tragedy right now where everyone's already making jokes about it. This is so different from any other tragedy I've experienced when it comes to comedy.
Mm-hmm. So I have a complicated answer for that because my mother passed away when I was 20,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't deal with it until I was 29. And so for the 9 years between, I was just drinking a lot and pretending that it didn't happen. And when I was 29, I started having a lot of panic attacks. I had like them sprinkled in before that, but like something that happened in my life triggered them to happen a lot more when I was 29. And then I started going to a psychiatrist, and after only a couple of months, he pointed out of like, oh, you're triggered because you didn't deal with your mom's death, and all of that is what's causing your panic attacks. And because of that, I started making jokes about my mom's death. Uh, and so for me, tragedy plus time, the time was very long, right?
Yeah.
And then once I started joking about it, I started feeling better about it, started feeling better about it. And then about a month ago, my grandma passed away because of coronavirus. And I immediately started making jokes about it. And they were doing well online. But some people were like, you cannot make this joke too soon. And I'm like, why is it too soon? Who's it too soon for?
I can understand with certain things, it's too soon, but if it's for your grandmother, if it's how you're dealing with your experience and it's healthy, I just don't understand. I don't understand that part of our culture where we go and point out what other people are doing wrong in that way. I know we all make mistakes. I know comedy goes too far sometimes, but that just doesn't seem reasonable at all. Would you like to do one of your grandma jokes real quick for us?
Oh man, now I have to think about what the joke was. Well, I could say my mom joke. I know that one off the top of my head.
Sure, please.
Uh, today I had, I always say it around Mother's Day. Today I had a seance to wish my mom happy Mother's Day. She responded, new life, who dis? Oh, sorry, I rewrote that joke. She didn't respond. She Ouija'd back, new life, who dis?
Yeah, I mean, when it's personal like that, I don't know. Now, when it comes to something less personal, when it's disconnected from you,
Mhm.
I feel like all of us are already making jokes about the coronavirus and the amount of deaths that it's causing on a very general level, not having to do with personal connections. And I don't know why it's okay in this case, whereas I knew very well with 9/11
Mhm.
not to make fun of it right away. You need to, hold off on it. You know, with other crises, it seemed different, but it's almost impossible not to make jokes. Why do you think that is?
So I didn't write my first 9/11 joke until recently. And the joke doesn't make fun of 9/11. It makes fun of 9/11 marketing, of the
Okay.
Never Forget campaign. Does that make sense? Of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's not making fun of what happened, but some people. a lot of people get triggered because like, oh, these are bad times, right? So they're not really necessarily listening to what the joke is. They're just listening to, oh, he said something that reminds me of a bad time I'm going through. And I think that's what a lot of it has to do with. And like my 9/11 joke was, how do I word it? It was something like, oh, it was just like, I hate the way that companies are marketing right now because there's a lot of commercials that are happening of like, we're all in this together, drive away in a Hyundai. And I was just like, that's like if in 2001 there was an Alzheimer's commercial where it was like, take your pills, never forget. So, which I don't think is a joke making fun of 9/11, right?
No.
And so, but I think people hear that joke and they're like, "Oh, he said the taboo thing of 9/11, and we can't make fun of that thing." And I was like, "How do you get over it if you don't make fun of it?"
Listen, I mean, the joke's obviously making fun of consumerism and capitalism and how it affects us. Which, it's funny. We're on a show to talk about marketing and self promotion. There's definitely a negative kind of marketing and self promotion. There's definitely a marketing and self promotion that you just don't need to do. And a lot of these companies are going out of their way to do it. They're advertising how they donated $1 million. Great, you donated $1 million. You don't need to talk about it.
No,
I'm not a religious person, but it definitely says in the Bible not to do that. You don't give money and then pat yourself on the back in front of everyone. It's a jerk move.
it is. I don't
Uh,
like it.
yeah. One of the few parts of the Bible I'm going to say, hey, great job, Bible. You got that right. I also like when Jesus throws over the table, but that's just more of a cinematic thing.
That one's
Uh,
fun.
it was. It's exciting. Also fun when somebody brings up what would Jesus do, and you go, well, I would knock over a table in anger and rage. Um, you just got to.
Yeah,
So another question that we had earlier was from Nathan Trucks. Do you know Nathan?
I don't know Nathan.
Nathan is wearing a badass hat in his YouTube picture. So Nathan wants to know what your experience working with pro videographers for filming segments or specials for stand-up. Have you experienced any work with videographers?
A little, not a whole lot. So at the pit, I would, if I had a show that I thought was going to do well, I would
Mhm.
hire. There's a few videographers at the pit within the community, and I would just hire them. And I generally trust them enough where I would just be like, "Hey, this is what I want. Do it," and then they would do it really. Like I would just be like, "Yeah, I want a medium shot for this whole like show because I don't need it for anything special. It's
Sure.
mostly just like archival footage for if I'm submitting to a festival or whatever." Um, but there was one show that I did a year ago where I wanted like all these camera angles and whatnot. So I hired two separate guys, and I was like, "All right, you sit in the middle, and you just give me a medium shot, and then you sit kind of up front and give me like more tight shots and follow shots."
Yeah. Okay. That's what most stand-up comics are looking for these days are those two specific shots.
Yeah.
Sometimes with an additional one. What problems have you run into working with videographers? What have you not liked? What would you have rather seen from them?
Um, I think I've had a generally good experience with the people that I've hired.
Great.
Yeah, I think mainly the issues were always like my issues. Like for instance, the last show. All right, so a year ago now, Game of Thrones ended, and everyone was pissed off. Remember that?
I
And
do.
I, being a huge Game of Thrones fan, I didn't hate the ending. And but this is leading somewhere. We're not going to talk about Game of Thrones the whole time.
Okay.
And I was like, wouldn't it be funny if I wrote a sketch show? It was like a 25-minute play almost, where it was a rewriting of the final episode of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
I was going to do that, but then I felt like it was too soon to do Game of Thrones. It still is a
Mhm.
little too touchy. So let's do another show that had a terrible ending, according to others. So we rewrote the finale of Lost.
Oh, so it was gonna be Seinfeld. All right.
Yeah, Seinfeld was on the list to do before I like gave up on this project.
Okay.
Seinfeld would be a good one. But anyway, I wanted all these shots, and I was like, how do I get all of it? But we're only doing the show once, maybe twice. So I hired someone to come to rehearsal to shoot that. But I don't think I told the performers that, and they showed up and they did the whole show, the whole rehearsal, in their like just like jeans and t-shirts and stuff, not in costumes. So I didn't direct it well. So
Okay.
what I heard a quote yesterday that 90% of directing is casting, but also 90% of directing is just being communicative. And I don't think I was communicative. So I think the fault of trying to shoot rehearsal footage and then like stitch it in as show footage, and then me not telling them, hey, this is going to be used. So come in costume. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like my big issue with videographers is not an issue of them. It's me not telling them what I want better and like clearly like articulating to them what I want.
Yeah, as a business owner, I run into specifically what you just said as well. 90% of hiring, or sorry, 90% of management is hiring. If I just hire people that can communicate really well with me right off the bat, that are going to be able to figure out the job for themselves, it's worth, sometimes paying them a little bit more even for a position that might not normally be worth that, because management's impossible. You know,
Yeah.
it's just really an impossible task. It's better to just kind of be a good counselor. So that makes a lot of sense. Thara Soup. I don't know if I'm saying that, if it's Thara or Thara, or maybe something else. But Thara wants to know, how do you promote yourself without seeming cocky or patting yourself on the back? And the answer is, you don't. I'm the best. I always, yeah, no.
Yeah.
How do you go about letting people know about you without coming off like a jerk?
So using Twitter for my first like answer is that who cares what other people think, right? And so about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Twitter started letting you retweet yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started doing that, people are like, you can't do that. That's taboo. That's weird. And I was like, why? Why is that weird? Because basically, we want what we do to be the best, right? So my
Yeah.
joke, I want the most people to see. And a lot of times, say I tweet a joke at midnight, so a lot of people aren't paying attention. But like around noon the next day, I'll retweet it. It'll bump up again, right? And I think a lot of that is just like saying, no, I am the best. You need to have the confidence of saying, like, what I just did is the best thing, right? And I think we do need to be a little bit more insistent on what we do is the best.
Okay.
If that does that make sense?
It does. See, and the way I look at it, or the angle I look at it from, is no one is the best. The best is an impossible position. So I just have to accept that I'm worthy of having attention put toward me. And that maybe if my work isn't the best right now, then I'm slowly working my way towards the best. But I think either thought process works. You just have to find that thought process that works for you, that allows you to do it. So that, and by the way, it's Tara, not Thera or Thara. The H is not pronounced apparently. How do you continue sharing your comedy with your friends and family, and are they not tired of it by now? I give them little breaks. I kind of parse out who I want to invite to different things.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, like there might be something that my dad might be more into. There might be something that my little sister might be more into. You kind of get people's taste in comedy. What about you, Ronnie?
So my brothers, when I first started doing improv, came to all my shows. My brothers refuse to go to improv shows now, and my brother watched Roast Yourself. So I have a show for those who are watching. I have a
Yeah.
show once a week where comedians roast themselves. And I think that was the first show my brother watched in a while. And I don't think I even invited him to watch it, but he watched it and then texted me after. That made me sad. And I was just like, oh no. But the thing is, I just don't invite my family anymore because I don't think I don't know. I feel like the two coastlines, New York and LA, and then Chicago, also have like this specific taste. And like middle America doesn't necessarily have that same taste and
Yeah.
things. And so I just don't feel like I need to like jam it down their throat. So what I try to do now is just try to find the people that do like what I'm doing. And so I have, of my like 41,000 followers on Twitter, I would say there's like a few hundred that I engage with on a pretty regular level. And I made like a list of those people, and then I'll DM them of like, hey, here's a show coming up that I think you might like. Or I made a mailing list where I'm just like, hey, if you want to be on this mailing list, I'll tell you about this show. I have like different like mailing lists for different shows.
Okay, that's great.
Parsing
So
out
Tara,
what I think they like. Yeah.
So Tara, it sounds like you need to find who your audience is and go after them. For Ronnie, it's not his family. For
Yeah.
me, it's definitely not my little sisters. I have been with them for the last month and a half, and every time I tell them jokes, they give me hate stares. So they do like 2017's DuckTales series. They're really enjoying that with me. That's
Ooh,
great.
that sounds
Um,
fun.
yeah, so Ronnie, let's get the last 5 minutes into a little bit more about what you're doing. You created Roast Yourself recently. That's every Wednesday. That goes up at 10 p.m. on YouTube Live.
Every Friday.
Oh, every Friday. No, yeah, sorry.
It's all good.
Every Friday, 10 p.m. live.
Yep.
Okay.
So that came about because just a few weeks ago, Facebook was like, here's a memory that happened. And there was 2 tweets in a row, or 2 Facebook messages in a row that I made, or statuses, excuse me, where I was like, I'm so bored right now. My life is boring. And then I screenshotted it and I was like, hey, look, 2009 Ronnie called and he thinks his life is boring. And I was just like, oh, I just roasted myself. And then I was like, there's a show idea right there. One of the best pieces of advice Ali, the owner of the pit, gave me was don't let perfection get in the way of good. And what that meant to me, and I think that's one of the pieces of advice that rings the most in my brain all of the time. And it's just like, if you have an idea, do it. Who cares?
Yeah.
And so for me, that has led to that. That led to a dumb show that I did just before quarantine happened, where I had 8 Adam Driver impersonators do 5-minute sets. So
I met one of them.
Bonnie was one of them. Was that the one you met?
Well, I met 2 of them then. Bonnie and one of her friends that goes around shirtless all the time.
Oh, Sean?
Yeah, he was the one at her birthday party.
Yeah. So I got 8 Adam Driver impersonators, and it was like, you know what? Just act on your impulses. Trust your impulses. So that's why Roast Yourself happened. And then, so when quarantine just started, I do a live show called The Really, Really Cheap Date Show. And it's basically just a variety show, nothing like terribly special about it, other than I was like trying to come up with a fun marketing name for it. And I was like, oh, Cheap Date Show was originally called Farts. And Farts, a highbrow comedy show. No one was coming to it, but the lineups were really good. So I was like, why is no one coming to this show? And then I changed it to the Cheap Date Show. And then I noticed like a massive influx of people that I didn't even know coming to it. And I was like, oh, if they go to the pit, they see on the board there are 2 shows happening right now. Should I go watch Farts with my girlfriend, or should I go watch a Cheap Date Show with my girlfriend? They're going to pick the Cheap Date Show and not Farts, right? So I was like, how do I amend my comedy taste to not be about farts? And so when quarantine happened, I was like, all right, let's do the Cheap Date Show. And then what I realized after doing it, it's like, I like doing the show, but the Cheap Date Show doesn't translate from real life to internet, because people in quarantine aren't on dates, right? So
They're on one very, very long date.
Yeah, they're on a 2.5-month date. And so I changed that show to the Late-ish Show.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, you know what, let's do like a late night variety show. So it was like, should I call it like Latest Show, the kind of late show? I had a whole bunch of like very generic titles, but I was like, you know what, it doesn't need to have like a fancy title or anything like that. What else have I been doing? A lot of podcasts, a lot of watching TV. I'm watching too much TV.
How much TV is too much TV?
Yesterday I watched 13 episodes of Sopranos.
That's too much TV. Oh my God, Ronnie, that's too much TV.
Too much TV. I've watched all of Curb Your Enthusiasm last week. 101 episodes.
Are you free on June 3rd at 9 p.m.?
Are you asking me on a date?
I'm asking if you want to come on to my game show and perform a game on my game show on June 3rd. It's next Wednesday.
Let's see. At what time?
9 p.m. Eastern Standard.
I am. Oh, I didn't delete it. I still have real life gigs in my calendar for June, and I was like, wait, what do I have going on?
Yeah, I have a few of those popping up right now. It's been sad and interesting to have Google Calendar events for things that can't happen. And tomorrow, are you on Drink Talk Learn?
I am on Drink Talk Learn.
Okay, so we'll both be on that show on Zoom, and you're going to be talking about what?
I am talking about end user license agreements.
Oh, awesome. That's what everybody wants to know about. I'm talking about the difference between isolated CBD and full spectrum hemp oil.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's going to be real
about the
interesting.
weird shit that we've agreed to do without knowing that we've agreed to do it.
I'm excited. I think you told me how it's going to start, and I won't give it away, but I hope everyone that's watching right now comes tomorrow. It's on Zoom at 8 p.m. If you want to know the info, you can send Ronny or me a message. Ronny, when we're done here, can you go into the comments and type in all of your vital info so people can find you? And also
my
type
social security in there.
Yeah, that's really important. That's really important. Do the whole thing. Don't just do the last 4 digits.
Oh my God, I didn't realize there was a live chat because my tab was stuck on private chat.
Oh,
and
yeah. I've been reading for it from you. I thought you were looking over at it when I would read the questions.
Oh my God, I am such a dum-dum.
Kristen Selman said that you are so funny in very big letters earlier.
Oh man, this is amazing. Oh, I missed all of this.
Well, no, you didn't, because I was asking them. I was asking you the questions as we went. It's all good. It all worked out. But if you can go into the main YouTube, like on this actual page, and put in your comment, be great. And anything else that you want to say or let people know before we end?
Do you, man? Do you?
Do you, man? Do you? Ronny, thank you so much for seeing you, and I'll see you guys next week at 7 p.m. on Monday. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.